On debt restructuring, especially as far as your poor countries are concerned, what were the deliberations like? How were they different from the previous leg that you have had, the previous round of discussion that you've had? And were India and China on the same page? And if not, then why? What were the issues raised?
To mention it that on the debt restructuring part, the consensus had eluded the global community for long. In February meeting of the Finance Minister Central Bank Governors in Bengaluru, after a long time a consensus could be reached that how to move forward on common framework, which is for the low-income countries. And then also that how to help Sri Lanka from their current position. There was a very clear understanding that that consensus should be maintained moving forward. Of course, different countries have a different approach. But underlying aspect is that whatever we discuss, but we must move together. That was a very, very strong point. At the same time, the challenges which are there, and when the common framework was prepared and finalized under the Saudi presidency, Saudi Arabia's presidency, in October 20, and certain policy level issues have still remained. For example, what should be the, what is the understanding of comparability of the treatment, meaning that all creditors, all official creditors should be treated equally. Nobody can get a better deal than other. And so on. There are other issues as well. What should be the cutoff date and how to do the assessment, how transparent it has to be, etc. So in this meeting in Gandhinagar, it was decided that in International Financial Architecture Working Group, they have been mandated to discuss those policy level challenges to speedier implementation of the common framework and make their recommendations. So that group will be meeting again in the month of September. They will come out, or if not in one meeting, they may take 1 or 2 meetings to address. We need a structural way of addressing the problems on that implementation were identified. Right. And why the problems are coming in, that different borrower countries which are in debt stress have a different set of issues. Some are facing balance of payment problem. For some, it is a private sector debt which is the most dominant portion. For yet another, it is the official bilateral credit is the dominant one, and for several of them, it is a multilateral credit is the largest one. So they cannot be one size fits all. It has to be more case by case approach, and we are in the right direction. At the same time, of the 4 countries which were identified for speedier implementation in February, there have been a definite movement in case of 3, which is Zambia, Ghana. Official Creditors Committee have been formed, or in case of Zambia, agreement itself has been reached. Sri Lanka, there has been a positive movement. Ethiopia was the 4th country for which progress has been limited, but is expected. The meeting gave a call that we should do it swiftly.
Right, right. Did China have objections to this?
See, each country comes out its own perspective, and each sovereign is right. China's position is that all creditors should take that responsibility.
And they also suggested some haircuts to be done by MDBs.
There the difference of opinion which rises, and from where the China is coming. There are countries where more than 50% of the debt belongs to multilateral development bank. So if only the bilateral creditor were to provide a debt restructuring, it will still put a pressure, or they have to provide a larger, longer debt restructuring they have to provide. On the other hand, the very model of MDBs is based on a preferred creditor status. That means they get paid first before anybody else gets paid. So there are competing expectations are there. China is coming in that even if bilateral creditors were to provide any relief, it will not solve the problem. So MDBs should also join in. MDBs, on the other side, their very basic model is to retain their AAA credit position. And if they were to be part of the restructuring, that credit rating can come under pressure. So these are the ones how to find a solution. So how the MDBs deal with it, they provide additional finance, they provide finance with additional concessionality. So it is saying is, there are 2 competing expectations, 2 competing imperatives, how to find a common solution.
Right, sir. Right, sir. So the other issue that is important and a lot of interest in that is how to treat cryptocurrency. So from what we understand is that the recommendations broadly are supervision, regulation and oversight of crypto assets and stable coins. Where does this put India? Because as we know, RBI has been pitching for a complete ban. So, will that be an option for us? I hope I'm not jumping the gun as of now. Will that be an option for us? And, we are going to follow the global dialogue on this, the global framework, and then go ahead. So, how many more, a year, 2 years before we come to some conclusion? Please share your assessment.
We are looking for an instant solution and an instant answer. And this is one area which is getting attention. And if you recall, under the Indian presidency, a very significant body of work we have facilitated at the global level. First, we approached IMF and suggested to them that they should carry out a macroeconomic analysis, that what kind of a macroeconomic policy should be adopted by different countries. They readily agreed with that suggestion which we have made our request, and came out with a very comprehensive paper in February, which is in the public domain, is a well considered, well structured report. Suggestions have come in, wherein they have made 5 broad policy elements have come in sort of a guidance tool that any country which has to follow, which has to formulate its policy, those 9 elements should be there, and that is a guide for everybody else. So that is one basic work, very foundational work which IMF has done. The second, under the Indian presidency, for every meeting of finance ministers, we organize a round table or a seminar. February there was one, April there was one, even in Gandhinagar meeting we organized a round table. We generated good discussion that how to deal with digital assets in terms of regulation, in terms of the policies. There is a second set of activities which have happened. Third set of activity is an agreement was reached that was reached in February itself, that both IMF and Financial Stability Board, they will come out with a synthesis paper in September. And then India suggested that synthesis paper should also have what is the way forward, what is the roadmap. So in this meeting at Gandhinagar, it was agreed that the synthesis paper to be brought out by FSB and IMF will also have the way forward and a roadmap. And further, the ministers and governors also suggested that they are expecting that the synthesis paper and a roadmap to come before the leaders summit, so that the leaders can also consider and take a view and provide a guidance to their ministers and governors that how to deal with and to move forward. In that process, India has suggested a presidency note, which was taken note as a major input for the synthesis paper.
Correct.
And the roadmap, which IMF and FSB will be bringing out. Further aspect, there are other 2 pieces which happened in the under the Indian presidency, is that OECD has come out with on the tax transparency, how to deal with on the transaction side, deal with it, not on the international taxation, on the crypto assets, sharing of information around the taxation side. This is yet another piece which has been completed. Plus, there has been a full consensus to deal with the issues relating with money laundering, on financing of terrorism, using crypto assets. That the work which FATF is doing, a full support has been provided, endorsement of their activity has happened. So this is something, the policy approach and the regulation approach will come out of this effort. And one of the piece again has happened is, which is important enough, FSB has come out with a high level recommendations on regulations for backed as well as unbacked crypto assets, and that found a full endorsement, meaning the building blocks of a good policy, a good set of regulations are getting into place, getting formulated. At the same time, there is a realization that that should be the minimum level. Beyond that, if any country wants to have a more stringent norms, they can do so, but nobody should go below the minimum, because then it can create a problem for others. So that is what Indian presidency has attempted, and there has been a good appreciation of those efforts, and the building blocks are getting formulated.
Okay, but to be a bit simplistic, and pardon me for that, so if I would like to ask, where does this really leave us at the moment? What would you say? especially in the context of the regulators' concerns?
Say the regulators, where these buildings, I'll request you that this requires a more detailed session on that kind of, there can't be any simplistic answer. That if we were to say in one or two sentences that every country should have a base level of policies and regulations and protect its financial sectors from the crypto assets. Countries, especially the emerging economies, if they want to be more stringent, they can do so.
An option is always there. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for this lovely conversation.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.